Shut up, man. And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Strategy Show. It is Tuesday, January 25th. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer, and we are brought to you by No House Advantage. 9-game slate coming up today. It's weird. It's like they flip-flopped Mondays and Tuesdays. Monday only had the 4-gamer yesterday. A little bit different for today. So we have a ton to talk about. Before you get here, before we get started, before we do anything, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Adam, did you end up playing yesterday?
Yeah, ended up playing. Didn't go particularly well, but yeah, I played.
I thought that I was going to be in line for a decent night. A couple of the guys that were necessities were guys that I was like 2x the field or more on. And then I didn't end up with any Daniel House, who was the key play for every single piece of it all. So that happened.
Yeah, it was one of those slates. Like I was over the field on a lot of really good plays, but it was just like, I don't know, a lot of popular players did well, and it was just difficult to win. Like I'm normally not going to win those slates.
Yeah. Oh, I had also didn't expect Daniel House to play 42 minutes yesterday.
Sure.
Of all of the guys on that team.
I swapped as much Pascal to him as I could, but I only had like 5% Pascal anyway, so it didn't really matter.
I actually tried to maintain a lot of my Pascal. Just, coming off the bench, I was like, all right, maybe he plays for that second unit, gets a little bit of extra run at the end. Like I was willing to take that stand. House ended up 1.7% owned or something on FanDuel. I would have liked to get to a little bit more, but
I thought that was reasonable. I kind of just didn't need either one.
Yeah. Well, we got 9 games. We have a ton of time. We have 57 minutes, but 9 games is a lot. So I'm ready to dive in if you are.
Yep.
All righty, here we go. Kicking it off. There's a lot of ugly out there for today. Denver Nuggets, 7-point favorites in Detroit, 219 total in this one for Denver. Will Barton, JaMychal Green, and Bones Highland are all either probable or off the injury report. Jeff Green is questionable. That's really the only key piece here. As we talk through it, we've got Nikola Jokic at 11-8 on FanDuel, 12-5 on DraftKings. Look, I like Jokic today, and he's going to pull a little bit of ownership by default because, a guy that averages like 30, 10, and 10 is just going to naturally be available from time to time. But on this slate, with the amount of other center value that's out there, with James Harden as pretty clearly the preferred pay-up option today, or at least in my opinion, I don't know how much I want to say other than like, yeah, Jokic is a guy that can go for 80.
Yeah, it kind of just feels like we've been in this spot with Jokic for a while now because he looks great, obviously, but he's priced. I don't even want to say correctly because there's still plenty of upside there. Like I would say he's still underpriced, but when you
Yeah.
compare him relative to some of the other pay up options, not to mention just other players on the slate, I still don't know that he's like as underpriced, or at least
Yeah.
that it's as easy to get to him. So like, yeah, he's always great. He went for 93 points like 2 or 3 games ago, and I mean, obviously it was surprising, but it wasn't like it was oh wow, that'll never happen again. Like it probably will. So yeah, he looks great if you can get there. The matchup is obviously fantastic, but like you were saying, Harden on DraftKings is 800 less, Embiid is 1200 less, LeBron is 1400 less, Murray is 2,500 less, and that's
Yeah.
literally just looking at the next four names
Yeah.
on the list in salary. I mean, it's or I guess not in salary, but in the way I have my sheet sorted right now.
Here.
So it's just there's so many other ways you can go also.
And after that, we've got Monty Morris at 17% owned on FanDuel, where he's 4,400. Like I understand that that's a decent valued price, but I thought I'd get to more. I don't find Denver to be all that interesting. Like to me, there's nobody that I look at and say like, oh, that's probably a guy you'll have a bit of.
Yeah, Barton's price tag adjusted a little bit. He's back to 6K. I think that looks fine. I think Morris at 4,700 looks fine, but like you were saying, nothing that really jumps out to me. And then also, and this is usually pretty difficult from like an actionability standpoint, but it's also the first game of the night, and chances are dumb stuff's going to happen by the end of the night where you wish you had roster spots left and hadn't used them on average plays.
Abel Ramos with the super chat said, Josh and Ship, I faded Booker and Paul because they were 10% or worse negative leverage on boom bust. Am I playing too aggressively? I think the easiest answer for that one is don't worry so much about the individual negative leverage on a player. Certainly going to play a role, probably ends up leading to having less of someone in those cases, but the leverage score on an individual play isn't all that important in comparison to like the rest of the slate. Do you have a better way to explain that?
I mean, it's your entire lineup that matters.
Yeah.
Booker and Paul were two of my highest owned guys yesterday, so I'm not really sure.
It also depends on the site. Like Chris Paul was 10-3 on FanDuel yesterday. I faded him because that was a price tag that seemed preposterous to me.
Yeah, if we're talking DraftKings, they were two of my highest owned guys. So they ended up whatever the numbers I ended up having for them were obviously fine for me when you balance it out with the rest of your lineup.
Yeah, if that's a FanDuel take, I didn't like getting to Paul all that much. Once the Jazz took out like their 7 best players, I certainly didn't think Chris Paul at 10-3 was the type of play I would want to get a lot of yesterday. That ultimately ended up being incorrect, but that's not something that I would want to go back in time and like try to change. Chris Paul at 10-3 facing none of the real Jazz players is not a spot that I'm trying to get to a lot. So yeah, maybe not. Depends on the site. But yeah, I wouldn't ever get myself bogged down on any one individual player's leverage score.
Yeah, and like one thing for me that I've noticed this season in general, and it has to do with this question, a lot of times the best plays in terms of chances of success, I think have been wildly overowned. So like the leverage score on them is still going to be negative, but you're also trying to balance out the chance of your lineup doing well with trying to maximize your leverage. So it's kind of a balancing act there. Like for me though, with the way that people have been using projections to make lineups this year though, a lot of times the plays that I'm still playing a lot of are overowned because the field is just jamming them in. But it's just balancing everything out.
Anthony Marcus, unsurprisingly, says Utah won. Amazing how someone can be so wrong so frequently. We're moving on to the Detroit Pistons. And we've got big ownership, as usual, coming into Cade Cunningham on FanDuel, where he's 6,800. He's 20% owned. I get it. Probably a little high for me, but still very clearly to me the best play you're going to find on FanDuel from the Pistons. Highest owned guy on the DraftKings side is Isaiah Stewart at 11%. That is likely happening because there's no Kelly Olynyk, who is out with COVID protocols, still no Jeremy Grant, and Frank Jackson is questionable. When I look at this, I see a Pistons team that is about to take on the 23rd in pace Denver Nuggets And I really don't see a single priority on Detroit. If I'm getting to anybody, it's Bay and Cunningham, because those are the two guys that I think might play 30 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's fair. None of them stand out to me. I don't think that it's a spot that I'm prioritizing here at all, but I'm with you. I mean, Cunningham at 7,300 certainly can go nuts. Like, he's the highest usage guy on the team. He's going to get assist opportunities. He's going to play mid 30s if this game's competitive. So that's fine, but you're going to have plenty of other options that look pretty good in that price range as well. Bay should play a lot. You should get center minute split between Stewart and Lyles, but none of them stand out outside of like just basically hoping to get lucky in tournaments.
Abel followed up, said he was talking about DraftKings. Yeah, like it's one of those things where if someone is still highly likely to be in the optimal but negative leverage, like you should still be getting that person and figuring out where to do it elsewhere. It's the relatively lower optimal percentage type guys that are also negative leverage, where it becomes really easy to find other guys in that area that project similarly and aren't overowned. But like the Devin Bookers of the world, it's hard to end up with like none, especially on a 4-game slate. So that's where I'm landing there. But, everything is context dependent. I don't have anything else to say about the Pistons.
Yeah, me either.
Like it's Cunningham your best play today?
From the Pistons, yeah.
Yeah, from the Pistons, not overall. We're going to get to a couple of the overalls in a bit. Some of them will be showing up in this game. The Charlotte Hornets, 3-point dogs in Toronto. 221 total here for Charlotte and Toronto. I don't know why I said it like that. Q tag on Gordon Hayward. We have no Jalen McDaniels for the Hornets. On the Toronto side, it's still just no Khem Birch. So let's talk Charlotte, where I think there are a couple of very interesting pieces. A lot of it happens on FanDuel, like LaMelo for 7,800, who's 20% owned, fully warranted. PJ Washington is 15% on FanDuel, 10 on DraftKings. Let's dig into that one on whether or not he's going to get those additional minutes with McDaniels out and potentially Gordon Hayward out. Cody Martin, we have at 17% on FanDuel. Again, I think a lot of that has to do with the status of Gordon Hayward, but we finally saw PJ Washington actually play more minutes. Played 31 this last time out with no McDaniels, no Hayward. McDaniels, I believe, got hurt on the 21st. We saw PJ Washington get to 27 minutes at that point. If Hayward is back, is PJ Washington still just going to play like 24 minutes?
I think somewhere in there. You could certainly still get a couple more minutes. I finally got the good PJ Washington game that I've been waiting for against OKC, but like he could play more minutes at the 4. If Hayward's back, he certainly doesn't have to. But if he's playing well, you can still get 24 to 26 minutes. I think at 4,900 now, he's basically priced like where he should be. There's still some upside there, but on average, I think that's about where he should be priced. If Hayward's out, I feel better about him getting more minutes just because I don't really know why he wouldn't.
Yeah. Who's the best play for Charlotte here today?
They all kind of just look like average to me.
Yeah, I agree.
Assuming Hayward's in.
Right. Yeah. So right now, I have Hayward in. I mean, I think PJ Washington is the best play on Charlotte if Hayward is in, and I use the term best pretty like loosely.
Yeah, like relative to each other, they all look pretty comparable. I think Washington probably looks the best, but I think it's basically Washington looks fine, Ball looks fine, Bridges looks fine, Rozier and Hayward look a little bit less fine, but still decent.
I mean, I think Rozier is the worst of everybody on this team today, relative, like of the guys you would play, like not like an Ish Smith type, but 8K and 7,800. It's not for me today. Yeah, it's LaMelo on FanDuel at 7,800, obviously. PJ Washington could be. And then Cody Martin, 3,600 on FanDuel. So that's $100 above the minimum. I think we're only interested in Cody Martin at that price tag with any sort of real interest if Gordon Hayward is out. If Gordon Hayward is in, I don't think that Cody Martin at 3,600 is like somebody that I need to go crazy to get to.
Agreed.
Well, the next team is a team filled with guys that we should probably go kind of crazy to get to. That would be the Toronto Raptors, who barely play anybody always. So Siakam and Van Vliet, I got in for 40 minutes apiece. These guys are 10, 15, up to 30% owned on FanDuel, where Fred VanVleet is 8,200. Like you got to play a ton of him if he's playing 40 minutes. Anunoby, Barnes, Trent to a degree, I think looks pretty good. I just want those. I want their starting five.
Yeah, I mean, I love this team. I love their rotation. The matchup is great against Charlotte. VanVleet at 9,100 is just, I mean, I don't want to say like a total mispricing, but it's not a very not a very tough price to make a case for. Siakam got power forward eligibility back on DraftKings. He's down to 8,900, so they lowered the opportunity cost and they lowered the actual salary. That always is nice. Scotty Barnes at 6,500 is going to look good. Anunoby coming off a game where he played 41 minutes. 6,900 is fine. I think in order, I would say it's probably Siakam, VanVleet, Barnes, Anunoby, Trent for me, but they all just look like good plays.
Anunoby before Barnes for me.
Yeah,
he's been a little bit better recently, and it's shooting guard, small forward. Well, I guess point guard, small forward also works for Scotty Barnes in the exact same way, but Barnes hasn't been great as of late. And I think the upside in Anunoby's minutes is a bit higher than Barnes.
I feel like everyone rostered Barnes lately. He's been low owned and done really well, but that's obviously anecdotal. Like I have no idea what he's actually done.
And I'm quibbling here. Like I want to play both of them, and
you also
I think they both look.
Barnes. I know that.
Yes, that's also true. That's also true. I actually like Gary Trent if he's 4% owned more than probably anybody else. If we're talking about GPP plays, like eventually he's going to not be playing.
Really appealing.
Yeah, eventually he's going to play 34 minutes like everybody else does, and not the 28. Like I gave him 32 for this one, but if you told me he played 36, no part of that would shock me. And like if you project Gary Trent for 36 minutes today, he's very clearly the best play on Toronto. So I think Gary Trent is actually the most interesting guy in GPPs on DraftKings. On FanDuel, it's VanVleet at 8,200, and I don't even think it's particularly close. That price is stupid.
Somebody said how many Toronto players in a lineup? Still probably 2 for me. It's a full 9-game slate. There's plenty of good plays. Like you could play 3 and get there on all 3, but it's pretty tough to do. And there's certainly a high opportunity cost at positions tonight. So typically on a slate like this, my answer is 2, unless you're talking about a team where half the guys are out with injuries and COVID, and everybody's underpriced.
Yeah, and like if it's 3, like it's probably not Siakam, VanVleet plus X. It's going to be 2 of Barnes, Anunoby, Trent, and then maybe one of the bigger guys.
Right.
Because if you're already locking in 18K, yeah, that's where it starts to become a little bit problematic. So
and it's one thing I'll do on bigger slates too. Like if I don't want to just hard cap teams at 2, I'll do max 3, but then set a rule that if I have 3 players from the same team, I have to have an opposing player that is projected for at least, like 25 or 30 points in that lineup.
Yeah, that makes sense. All righty. Can we get to anything else here? Boucher or Precious?
I think it's pretty tough on this slate. Like Precious only has center eligibility. Boucher still played 24 minutes last game. There's a path to a very good game for him at 5,800. It's not a particularly likely one, and I think that on this slate, it's going to be tough to get there.
Yeah, we're on the same page here. Nothing else for Toronto for me. Just if you got a starting line, if you got anybody from the starting lineup of the Raptors in your lineup, you should feel pretty good about that. Just saw your DM from 7 minutes ago. That's great. All right, let's talk schedule for the rest of the day. Coming up after this, first look NFL strategy show at 11 a.m. We've got the NHL strategy show at 2, the Yahoo NBA show at 3. Deeper dive, Adam will be back for that at 5, NBA Live Before Lock at 6, and then PGA Live Before Lock coming up at 8 p.m. We also have NBA ownership rankings that are free, PGA top golfers free, and NHL player rankings free as well. We go to probably the worst game on the slate, the LA Clippers, 5-point underdogs rather, in Washington. Everybody that is normally available for the Clippers are in, except for, obviously, Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Marcus Morris is 11% owned on FanDuel. No one else in this game is north of 5% on either site. I would prefer to just basically not have the Clippers today.
Pretty much where I'm at. Like Jackson, Morris, I guess Zubats are all at prices where if they land in like a lineup, fine. But this is a team where I just look at it and it's like, yeah, okay, maybe they'll be 1% owned and I'm technically overweight on some because I have 2%, but yeah, I don't see much that stands out here.
I don't see a guy on the Clippers that I would have in more than 10% of my lineups.
Yeah, I'd be
the rest of it's
really
just
surprised.
like random shit that shows up.
Yeah, unless guys get ruled out. I don't want to say I'm not playing the Clippers because I said that the other day, and then somebody got mad that I had like 2% of 3 different guys.
I remember seeing that screenshot. I don't know if you sent it to me or in like our normal thread where it was just like, oh, yeah, you had 4 guys at 3%, 2.72.
Yeah. And that was after like Marcus Morris got ruled out late, and I late swapped him more than I had. But yeah, like Jackson, Morris, Zubats, and if I have more than 0%, I won't be surprised, but certainly not going out of my way to get to anything here.
Okay. And it feels like the exact same story on Washington where everybody is available. And now this team suddenly has 15 semi-legitimate NBA players. And some of those guys aren't even playing. Highest owned guy in this game is 6% owned KCP on DraftKings at 4,300. And I pretty much feel the same way here about the Wizards as I do the Clippers. Like, if I got some Bradley Beal at 9K, okay, $6,600 Spencer Dinwiddie feels like it's going to leave me underwhelmed. I just would rather like unselect this game.
What happened to Harrell last game?
I have no. All right. So what they were doing was Gafford started and played a rotation. Thomas Bryant came in as the first center off the bench, and then Harrell was taking over for him. They did the same thing in the second half, but it was such an ass beating that Harrell never caught his actual second rotation.
Okay, got it. So they're using Harrell as the closer.
Yeah.
If he wasn't
I gave everybody 16 minutes. Harrell, Gafford, and Bryant.
If he wasn't only a center, I'd have some interest in $3,400 Bryant, but that's a pretty tough sell with only center eligibility.
You just have to get lucky.
Rui at 3,500, maybe not the worst play. But
he could also not play today. Like if they want to just sit one or two of these guys that are in the rotation, like Rui sits, they give Bertans more minutes, or like Neto plays a little bit more and they move everybody down a peg. I have no concept of who's actually going to be on the floor for this team each day.
Yeah, I mean, I expect it more so to be like Neto in and out of the rotation. Avdia had gotten a DNP right off the bat, and then he came back and has been playing well, so I kind of assume he's going to keep playing. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I don't want to get to any of these guys. There's some chance that Rui plays, 22 minutes and ends up being okay at 3,500, but even that strikes me as more like most of the time his quote-unquote good game is going to be like, cool, he got 23 or 24 points. He gets the fire emoji, which looks cool, but really it didn't help you that much. So, yeah, mostly just not getting to this team either.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about needing what, like 35 plus or something on a day like today. It's just Rui's going to need a lot more minutes than we can conceivably project him for. I can't imagine trying to get to Clippers and Wizards if you played like the 3-game early slate.
Yeah,
like
I thought you were going to say I can't imagine adding Domantas Sabonis to this rotation because that would be.
Well, I mean, what's really crazy is that he should be their center if that happened.
Right. Yeah.
Did you see the trade? Like, did you see the write up of the trade that they were pitching?
I didn't have a chance to read it and see what they were giving up. I just saw should the Wizards go after Sabonis, and I was like, to do what? Play like him at the 4, Gafford at the 5, Bryant at the 3, Kuzma at the 2.
The suggestion they gave at the end of the article was Hachimura, Kispert, and Thomas Bryant, which quite clearly the Pacers are going to tell them they'll hang up laughing immediately.
Right. Like I do agree the Wizards should give up those 3 for Domantas Sabonis.
Yeah. If the Pacers called them and were like, hey, we're really interested in Rui Hachimura, Corey Kispert, and Thomas Bryant for Sabonis, what do you want to do? I mean, I would probably pull a muscle trying to get to the fax machine fast enough to get that into the NBA, which, by the way, I'm almost positive they still use a fax machine for that.
That's not surprising at all.
Yeah, they did. As of like 2 or 3 years ago, they definitely still did. I don't know if it had to change or anything via COVID, but it used to be a fax machine because they've had trades that like people had to hunt down fax machines to get them in the deadline.
Right.
Anyway, let's stop talking about Washington. We've already spent way too much time here. Let's go to Sacramento and Boston. Very different game here. Sort of. For the Kings, we've got a Q tag on De'Aaron Fox, which I think is pretty important. Q tag on Damian Jones, which I don't think is very important. Highest owned guy on FanDuel in this one is Halliburton at 2.5. Highest owned guy on DraftKings in this one is $4,600 Rashawn Holmes, 11% owned. No other ownership coming into this team, but I think we can both agree if De'Aaron Fox is playing in this one at 7,300, he's a guy that is sniffing. He's way more interesting than anything we talked about in the Clippers and the Wizards.
Yeah, if Fox is able to go at 7,300, he looks good. Conversely, if Fox doesn't go, Halliburton at 7,400 is going to look better. You're going to get the ball in his hands a lot more. You're going to get more opportunities for him. So one of those guys ends up being someone that I like here. And then I like Holmes. I mean, 4,600. He played about 24 minutes last game. He's a good fantasy producer, point per minute. He's 1.04 DraftKings points per minute. You still have the opportunity cost issue. It's always dicey to go to a center-only guy that has a chance of only playing 24 minutes. But at the same time, you could conceivably get 26 or 28 here. He just looks like a pretty decent value.
Let's say Fox plays, and let's say Damian Jones is available. He has played the past 3 games. Who's leaving this rotation? Metu or Terrence Davis?
Terrence Davis.
Okay. I think it could go either direction.
I mean, I think it could go either direction too. My guess, based on what they've done with Davis previously this year, is that it's Davis.
Yeah. I originally went Davis. I then went to Metu. I don't think that it makes a difference with regards to what you're playing here for today. Do you like anything else for Sacramento? I mean, like the $4,600 price on Holmes is just dumb. You have to get to a little bit of that. I don't know what else I like though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really interested in the other pieces. If Fox is out, then you can start to look to Hield or Davis or maybe Davion Mitchell. But really, I think I'm going to really like, or at least fairly like, one of Fox Halliburton, depending on Fox's status. And then I'm going to like Rashawn Holmes.
Yep. That's all I've got here. It's relatively easy. It's kind of weird. On the Boston side, though, everybo's available except for Bol, who wouldn't have been available even if he were available. So as we look at the Celtics, this is a tale of 2 different sites. Highest owned guy on DraftKings for the Boston Celtics is 6.5% owned Al Horford. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Robert Williams, and Al Horford are all double digits, including Tatum, Williams, and Horford, all 18% or higher on FanDuel. Jason Tatum, 9,100 on FanDuel. I think he looks great. Robert Williams has been amazing as of late. 1.15 FanDuel points per minute over the last 30 days. He's 6,900 with power forward eligibility. And I think that Horford still works, even though he's been sort of the opposite of Robert Williams. Not very good as of late. For DraftKings, I'm guessing you don't really have a priority here.
Yeah, I wouldn't say a priority. I would say that I think Horford looks fine. He played 34 minutes last game, which was good to see. His playing time's been, pretty hit or miss recently, as has his production. But 5,900 against the Kings, if he gets 32 minutes, he'd look pretty good. I don't mind Robert Williams in tournaments. Certainly gives you plenty of upside and has been playing a lot of minutes. But yeah, the pricing is pretty tough to get to. I mean, I guess technically I don't mind Tatum or Brown either. I just think they're going to be very difficult to get to.
I'm with you. FanDuel, on the other hand, very, very different scenario here. We've got $9,100 Jason Tatum, small forward, power forward. I think he is more than reasonably owned at 20%. I think that Jaylen Brown, shooting guard, small forward, looks fine at 12% at 8,500. Robert Williams' price looks good. Horford's price looks good. If you're playing on FanDuel, you're going to have a very different set of exposures to the Celtics than you will on DK. Do you have any qualms with the ownership coming in for the Boston guys on FanDuel? I'm guessing no. I mean, like, if Horford keeps playing like he's been playing, I don't think he's an 18% owned guy. But like,
yeah, but
I also don't think he keeps playing like I'm not going to project him at 0.87 moving forward either.
Right, and even if he does, like, he's 5,500. Say he plays 28 minutes. If 0.87 is his new average, you still expect it to be higher against the Kings. So he's still just kind of coming in as like a good enough play.
Yeah, and I still have him in basically as a fantasy point per minute guy in this matchup. So I'm happy to get to Horford. It's rare that I get to Boston, but FanDuel pricing is saving the day here. All righty. Then we go to the Los Angeles Lakers, 3-point favorites in Brooklyn, 226 total. Brooklyn's got to play it a little bit differently. No Kyrie Irving in this one after a 4-game road trip. But that's not even the most interesting thing here, because Anthony Davis is back for the Lakers. We have no idea how many minutes he's playing yet. On the Brooklyn side of this one, though, Claxton's questionable. Clearly, we have no Kyrie, no Durant, no Joe Harris, no Paul Millsap either. LeBron's about 10% owned. No one else is owned here for the Lakers. I don't really want to get to 11-1 LeBron with AD back.
Yeah, obviously cuts in his production a lot, or at least a decent amount. With Davis active this season, LeBron has averaged 1.27 DraftKings points per minute. In the games he's played without Davis, he's averaged 1.62 DraftKings points per minute. Part of that, discrepancy is probably that LeBron is just healthier and playing better recently than he was earlier in the year when Davis was active. I think
they were also playing a center too, a lot.
Right. Yeah, you're probably looking more like a 1.4 fantasy point per minute guy in LeBron, which is fine, but on this slate, it still puts him back. Damn, I'm good. 42 games with Davis since the start of last year, 1.4 DraftKings points per minute for LeBron.
Well, don't forget, there's also Russ.
Well, right, but Russ kind of just doesn't matter. I mean, I don't think he matters that much for LeBron.
If LeBron James scores 1.4 fantasy points per minute with AD since last year, that number is definitely lower than that if Russell Westbrook is also on the floor. I got him at 1.33 for the game. We're quibbling here.
Yeah, I don't really know that it has to be, but either way. Like LeBron looks fine. He's just not going to look as good as the other guys.
Yeah. And then Russ has not been good in these scenarios. I got him at 1.13 for this game. Earlier in the season, we would have said AD is the guy that we like the most based on these prices. I gave him 28 minutes. I don't have a damn clue what's happening here with Anthony Davis. My only expectation now is that we are not going to see centers any longer for this Lakers team. I think the center minutes are going to be Anthony Davis and Stanley Johnson moving forward, or, Melo or Ariza or LeBron or like whoever the hell you want to call it in those sort of instances. But I think the days of Dwight Howard and or DeAndre Jordan are completely gone.
You would think. I don't know what Kurt Rambis thinks, but
I mean, if they want to win, if they're going to bring a center out there again, they're not making the playoffs.
Sure.
So we'll see. If Kurt Rambis and Kurt Rambis' wife are coaching the Lakers, then it's going to be AD, LeBron, Russell Westbrook, DeAndre Jordan, and Dwight Howard in the starting lineup. I can't play Lakers today.
Yeah,
in a game with a 226 total against the Nets with one star.
Yeah, I mean, like if you get to some LeBron or some $8,300 Westbrook, fine, but it's just not anything I'm prioritizing.
Yeah, it's crazy. Brooklyn's slightly different. James Harden is 10,500 on FanDuel, 11.7 on DraftKings, and to me, very easily the top pay up option in this slate. I got him at 1.64 fantasy points per minute because he's just a slightly different player when Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant aren't on the floor. Talk to me about your boy, James Harden.
Yeah, a little bit different. Good spot for Harden, obviously, going against the Lakers. Without Harden or without Kyrie or Durant, you just expect him to do everything. I'm pulling up the rates now, but he's going to look like the top pay-up option tonight.
Yep. Here's you ready for the most interesting thing on DraftKings? Without question, the dumbest thing they've done this year. Do you see the positional eligibility on Patty Mills?
And James Harden's only a point guard.
Yeah. Small forward Patty Mills is not a thing that exists in this world.
Yeah.
When James Harden's active too.
19 games played without Durant or Irving since the start of last year for Harden. 1.6 DraftKings points per minute, 33.5% usage rate, 46.5% assist percentage.
Yeah. Lock and load. And gets a matchup against a fast-paced Lakers team that is also not particularly good defensively. This is coming out aces for Harden. But we've got a lot of free time to go around in this one. Kessler Edwards is 17% owned on FanDuel at 4,200. Cam Thomas got to 10% on DraftKings at 3,800. Bruce Brown is getting 10% ownership at 3,900. Patty Mills, who luckily can be in 5 of the 8 positions on DraftKings today, is in 20% of lineups. I think he's a little bit over-owned in that regard, but at the same time, he's going to play 34 minutes or more here with no Kyrie around. What else do you like from Brooklyn?
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in Mills at 4,900. Just like you said, he should play 34, 35 minutes. Pretty decent price tag. Really easy to fit him into lineups because of that positional eligibility. Kessler Edwards, I guess, looks fine. Cam Thomas or Bruce Brown look fine. I'm not in love with either one, but they're both cheap and they both should have enough opportunities where if they do play well, they can get some more minutes. Aldridge at 5,500 is always kind of appealing just because the ceiling is so high, but you do still have Claxton questionable. You have Aldridge coming off of a game where he played like 16 minutes, 17 minutes. You did see that center rotation start to have three guys, at least sort of. Blake Griffin played 6 minutes there. So Aldridge, very risky, certainly could pay off for you, but I feel better getting to somebody like Patty Mills just because of the positional eligibility.
You and me both. Small forward, just incredible, truly incredible. I don't know if we're going to see Claxton or not today. He has been out since January 10th, so he has missed the last 7 games for the Nets. If he is back, I'm guessing one of James Johnson or Day'Ron Sharpe aren't going to play today. Don't know which one it's going to be. Probably doesn't matter either way, but keep your eye on that Claxton news.
Harden is as close to a free square as you're going to get from a pay-up option, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't want to. I'm not saying you have to just play Harden in every lineup because it's almost always difficult to say that about guys that are that expensive because he still very easily can just lose to Nikola Jokic or LeBron or whoever, any of these guys at the top, Luka. But he looks the best. He's somebody that I expect to get to a ton. Also, Patty Mills, 4 games this year without Durant or Kyrie, and with Harden, 34 minutes per game, 0.98 DraftKings points per minute.
To me, Harden, the free square discussion is usually something I try to reference from a cash perspective. 10-5 Harden shooting guard small forward on FanDuel. I don't understand how you get to a cash game lineup without that.
Yeah, I don't know how you play one on DraftKings without 11-7 Harden either.
Sure. At the very least, there are enough guys in that price range with better eligibilities that it might just become harder to get to him because it's point guard only. I can see the path where you end up with DeJounte Murray and use that $1,000 elsewhere or something along those lines. On FanDuel, I don't see the path. And you're seeing it in the ownership too, 37% owned. But yeah, when it comes to pay up options, it's hard to call anybody a true free square just because there's too many guys around him. There's no reason that Luka or Steph can't just outright beat Harden on a day like today. It's lower for sure, but yeah, free square is tough on a 9-gamer. Free squares are usually on a 9-game slate. A free square is usually the $3,500 guy that is going to play 35 minutes instead of 8.
Right. Compared to what you're normally talking about with the top tier guys, I think Harden is a free square.
Agreed.
But I don't mean that in the sense that you should just people that are playing Jokic instead of Harden are wrong or something. Absolutely not what I'm saying.
No House Advantage is the presenting sponsor of this show. Can't beat it. Use the promo code Awesemo, get a $25 deposit bonus. You're basically building a priority ranking of player props. So the one you like the most might be worth 10. The next one will be worth 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. You're working your way down the line. I'm going to hit Adam with a couple props. How do you feel about over under 8.5 for Montrezl Harrell today?
8.5 what?
Points.
Actual points?
Yeah.
Over.
Okay. I think he's interesting in that regard. Yeah.
But it's just if he plays 16, I think that puts him about there. And if he plays more, then it's an easy over.
Right. How about, let's see, who else would be interested? Who's getting a big benefit? Is there a James Harden line anywhere around here? There is. Harden. Oh, man, this has to be a snap over. Which one would you like most? And you could add them all together for the combinations too. 21.5 points, 9.5 assists, 7.5 rebounds. I got him at 30 real points, so I think I'm going to take the points.
Hang on a sec. All right, what were the numbers again?
21.5 real points.
I have him at 28.
I got him at 30. 7.5 rebounds.
I have him at 7.9.
I got him at 10.5. 9.5 assists.
I have him at 12.5.
I got him at 11.5. So I got him at a triple double. 38.5 points plus rebounds and assists is the number. I've got it at 52.5.
I have it at 49.
I think he's got to get hurt to not get 38.5.
Yeah.
So James Harden will likely be your number one guy for today, barring any sort of crazy injuries that bring people in for obvious overs. But make sure you're attacking James Harden today on no house advantage, because he has props set up as if Kyrie is playing. And spoiler alert, he's not. All righty. On to the New Orleans Pelicans, 8.5-point dogs in Philly, 215 total. And they're on a back-to-back right now. I don't really know how we can project them. So I left every single projection that I had in from them yesterday in for today. And I'm going to assume that Brandon Ingram isn't playing today. I don't really know what else we could do until we get any additional information. But if that's the case, Josh Hart, Joe Val, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who fell into a bunch of minutes and closed over Garrett Temple. I mean, there's a lot to like here if they're just running it back.
Yeah, if Ingram's out, then there's plenty to like. Alexander-Walker's still sitting there at 3,700. He played 34 minutes yesterday. Doesn't have to do that again, but certainly could play like 10 minutes less and still project as a pretty good value. And then, clearly we know that 30 plus minutes is on the table. Herbert Jones at 4,500 would still look fine. Hart's salary dropped like $700 or something since yesterday. Joe Val's salary came down. He'll have his hands full with Embiid, but still a really good point per minute guy. If you think, if you're scared to go to Joe Val, you get $3,100 Jackson Hayes if you think he's going to play more because of fouls or something. So yeah, this is a really appealing team if Ingram is out. If Ingram's in, they kind of suck.
Yeah. Who knows? I'm assuming he's out for right now, but we're not going to know that for a while. So keep your eye on Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Graham, Joe Val, Hart, Herb Jones, Temple. Like, there's a lot of value to go around here. But this is a breakdown for the deeper dive in Live Before Lock. It's not important to break this down on the back-to-back. For Philly, though, very different team today. Lots to talk about. On the Philly side, I lost my depth chart tab. Here we go. So no Seth Curry in this one. We're already without Danny Green and Shake Milton, and Matisse Thybulle is questionable for the first time in a while. I put him in for right now. We've got my boy Maxey pulling more ownership than I actually expected on FanDuel at 5,900, where he's 36% owned. He's 20% owned on DraftKings. Completely agree with it. Tobias Harris looks pretty good at 7,400. Korkmaz probably the easiest play to get to from Philly, 4,400 on FanDuel, 4,500 on DraftKings. Shooting guard, small forward, and likely to play 34 minutes or more because of Seth Curry now being out. And then you obviously have Joel Embiid, who's pulling a bit more ownership than I was totally expecting, given what's out there for center. But what do you like for Philly?
Most of it. Maxey should play 40 minutes or so again. 6,400 on DraftKings isn't the best price in the world, but if he's going to play around 40 minutes, that looks fine. Korkmaz at 4,500, I agree, especially if Thybulle's out, but either way, he should play 30 plus minutes. He looks pretty good. Harris looks fine at 7,400. Embiid, though, at 11,300. I mean, I struggle with what to do with guys like Embiid, where they were always really good and then they just take another step forward. But over the last month, he's played 444 minutes. He has a 41.9% usage rate, and he's averaged 1.8 DraftKings points per minute, 27.5% assist percentage. I think he looks really, really good.
I went 39% on the usage for today, 23% assist rate, 18% rebounding rate. I got him at, let's see, I have my FanDuel number in front of me. I've got him at 1.75 DraftKings points per minute for today.
Yeah, I think that's very reasonable.
Yeah, the problem is it's at a position where we have no shortage of guys that look good at center. Like, we can count guys that also have other eligibilities like Pascal Siakam, but we've got Joe Val, we've got Holmes as the value. Jakob Poeltl is pulling a ton of ownership. Right. Christian Wood, Nurk, PJ Washington, Towns, Jokic, like Robert Williams. There is no shortage of getting to center. So I like getting to Embiid, but holy shit, pick one out of a hat.
Yeah, I guess it's so tough for me to quantify, because I'm not really sure that pick one out of a hat applies to Embiid anymore. Like, he just is giving you a completely different ceiling than, like, he can access that like Jokic-esque, 75, 80 point game that most people can't. Right now, we don't have ownership in the Boom Bust tool, but we have Embiid with a 7.5% chance of being optimal. We also have him projected like several points lower than I will. So that tells me that what do you have him at right now? Do you know? 56, 57 DraftKings.
Okay, I got him at 57.5. Showed up in my sim at 9%. We got him at 12% ownership. Like, I think 12% ownership is about right for him, given the amount of center talent that's out there.
Yeah, I think. Okay, yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay. Like, would you prefer Jokic or Embiid?
Really, I think Embiid.
I think it's Embiid as well. I think just 12.5 with Jokic being $1,200 more expensive. The way that Embiid has been playing right now, I think that $1,200 matters.
Right. Like, to be clear, if you just have some lineup somehow that you love and you have $12,500, I prefer Jokic. But Jokic projects higher. But I think I can build better lineups probably with Embiid instead.
Yeah, that $1,200 will come into play more the other way. Anything else for Philly? Like, if Thybulle's out, does that create any additional value for an Isaiah Joe or Charlie Brown?
You could throw darts at Niang if you wanted. I don't know that I really would, but
okay. And I'm sure Korkmaz, you're just in agreement. He's just
Korkmaz is fine. Glad to see he managed to score some points the day that I didn't play DFS after playing like 40 minutes and getting 12 fantasy points somehow.
Boy, do you run bad.
Yeah, horrible.
You have some nerve. Are we good for Philly?
Yeah.
I looked to my left and I saw you starting what you were about to say, and I knew where it was going. And the look on my face was just like, oh, I can't wait till he finishes this sentence. San Antonio Spurs are 3-point favorites in Houston, 235 total. And it's interesting here. Everybody that's normally available for the Spurs is available. Everybody that is normally available for the Rockets is available, minus Usman Garuba, who doesn't really matter. For the Spurs, Murray, White, Keldon Johnson, all about 13% owned on FanDuel. I actually really like Keldon Johnson for 5,300 there. I like him quite a bit on DK, but this whole entire Spurs team on DraftKings looks great. Murray, 17% owned. Jakob Poeltl at 6,400, 30% owned. Derek White, 30% owned. Keldon Johnson, 22. Vassell, 10. Walker, 10. McDermott, 10. Playing all the Spurs on DraftKings today, it appears.
I have no idea what happened with this pricing, but yeah. 10K from Murray against Houston looks great. Even with White back, he's like a 1.4 fantasy point per minute guy. Really, really good price tag there. Poeltl looks great at 6,400. White at 6K looks good. Johnson looks good at 5K. The Vassell, Walker, McDermott group, I don't think I want more than like one of them. But also, when the most expensive one in that group is 4,200, there's a pretty good chance one of them is exceeding their salaries. So, yeah, I get the ownership here. I agree with it. This is a good example of where I'm trying to refresh or pull up the Boom Bust right now, but I would guess, or I would assume, and it looks like it's the case, you're probably going to get the ownership on most of these guys being higher than their optimal lineup percentage, because it's a 9-game slate. And when you talk about an optimal lineup percentage, you're just basically saying, like, in hindsight, what are the chances that these guys ended up being in the optimal lineup? And you're completely ignoring that you have to, factor in their chances of success when you build your lineup. Like, if you're just looking at leverage. So, I fully expect them to be quote unquote over-owned, but they're also likely to have some of the highest optimal lineup percentages, which means that I'm still going to want to be getting these guys into lineups and then finding spots elsewhere in my lineup where I can get under-owned guys where I'm not sacrificing the most probable plays on the slate.
Yeah, I look at Jakob Poeltl at 31% owned, and I think that's pretty easy to come in under on, even though I still think he looks really good and one of the better center options of the day. Like, to me, I have him basically like 6th overall. If I give him an extra minute, you can make a case that he's 3rd, but at 31.5% ownership on a 9-game slate, there is not a shortage of centers that can do what he needs to do tonight. Still like him, though. 7,700 on FanDuel is a bit more reasonable. Just play all the Spurs. The Rockets will bring the best out of you, I would imagine.
Yeah, they typically do.
Now, on the Rockets side, similar-ish story. Like, there's a lot here to like, too. I mean, it's a very high-paced game. Christian Wood's 20% owned on FanDuel, as is Kevin Porter, as is Eric Gordon. Those guys are pulling a little bit of ownership, but less so on DraftKings. Jalen Green, Jayshawn Tate also in and around 10% owned. So I definitely want to cast a pretty wide net in this game, just in general. Spurs look better, but Houston still looks good.
Yeah, agreed. And you're not getting as much ownership on Houston. On DraftKings, you're getting 15% to Gordon, which I think makes sense with shooting guard, small forward eligibility. You're getting 12% to Wood, which looks fine. 9% to Green, 8 to Porter. I think I think they should be lower owned than the Spurs guys, but it's still a back and forth game, and there's still a very high ceiling here. Like, this is an example of a spot where I ideally in most lineups I'd still only have two guys from San Antonio because of opportunity cost, but I don't really have an issue if I have Murray plus Pirtle plus Keldon Johnson and then bring it back with like Christian Wood or Kevin Porter or somebody, because the Spurs are all at price tags where three of them really can exceed their salary. You just need the game to be competitive to the end, most likely. And if it is, then you definitely have some underpriced guys on the Houston side too. So that's one spot where I think using a rule like that makes some sense.
Or even if you don't have Murray, if it's like Pirtle, White, Johnson, we're talking about three
Right.
guys at 17-4 total. Like there's no reason that those three guys can't go for slightly north of 40 fantasy points today. It just all looks really good. Probably the best overall matchup on the slate in terms of just like pricing and pace and lack of defense, at least on one side of it. So
Yep.
Two more to go. Dallas Mavericks, 3-point dogs in Golden State, 211 total. This one's slightly different. On the Dallas side, we don't really have anything that we need to talk about. Frank Ntilikina is off the injury report. Sterling Brown is out. None of that matters. For Golden State, a little bit different. Still no Draymond, no Andre Iguodala, no James Wiseman. We do have a questionable tag on Klay Thompson for right now. Kristaps Porzingis is 7,500 on DraftKings. He's the second highest owned guy behind Dorian Finney-Smith on DK. Smith also pulling that ownership on FanDuel. Jalen Brunson, 21% owned on FanDuel at 5,400. That's interesting. Luka, basically unowned, 0.4% on FanDuel at 11.4, 5.5% on DraftKings at 10.9. Is there anything here that appeals to you? Because I find these guys unappealing.
Nothing that really stands out. Clearly, you're never wrong for getting into some Luka, and I assume his ownership will be pretty low, that considering that you have Harden at the same position, you have plenty of other stuff to pay up for, but it's going to be low for a reason. Porzingis at 7,500 is fine, but there's still guys that are just priced a little bit better. Beyond that, I don't see a whole lot. Like Finney-Smith, Maxey type guys is like last pieces in is okay, but definitely not a team that stands out as a priority.
Alrighty. Yeah, it's Luka's kind of sneaky on FanDuel at precisely 0.4% ownership, but that's the case for basically any pay up star like that. So I don't really have anything else. So I don't like 21% owned Jalen Brunson when Luka and Porzingis are both active. That seems like a little high to me, but 5,400 is the price tag that you would want to try to take a shot at.
Yeah.
And then we go to the Golden State Warriors, where we've got Kevon Looney, 16% owned on FanDuel at 5K. I don't really want to do that. Next highest owned.
Is he power forward?
Yeah.
Okay. I was say, how the hell is he getting ownership at center?
Yeah, that's the only way that he could be. He's 6% owned on DraftKings, which is the second highest mark in this game. There is no ownership coming to the Golden State Warriors, and I agree with that.
Yeah, I don't really think there should be. I think it goes without saying that Steph Curry can have a big game, but if he does, I don't think he'll be in my lineup. I won't win tonight, I guess. Yeah, there's just nothing that stands out to me here.
$9,800 Steph Curry with, like, the way people would hear this, no Draymond and potentially no Klay Thompson, is 1.8% owned on FanDuel. And it's just like, yeah, that's about right.
Yeah.
But I feel like if just the random person is like knew that information, he'd get jammed.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it's nothing even to do with Steph. It's just you have DeJounte Murray, you have Harden, you have Jokic, you have Embiid. That's just up there. Like, you have Van Vliet for a bunch less. It's, yeah, like if you get there in a tournament lineup or two, whatever, fine. Curry can go for 80, but just pretty far down my list of priorities.
All righty. Well, let's close it out then. Minnesota Timberwolves, 3-point favorites in Portland, 227 total. But before we get to it, 600 viewers in here, 129 likes. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't done it yet. For the Timberwolves, we know Patrick Beverley is questionable in this one, and Anthony Edwards is off the injury report. On the opposite side for Portland, we are getting Norm Powell back. Robert Covington, Nas Little, and Dennis Smith Jr. are all probable. No Larry Nance, no Dame Lillard, no Cody Zeller. On the Minnesota side, Anthony Edwards, 21% owned on FanDuel, where he's 6,700. Yes, please. Jared Vanderbilt, the only other guy in double digits in ownership that's also on FanDuel at 5,600. Seems about right to me. What do you want to do on the DK side with the Wolves?
I'm confused.
That makes sense.
Oh, okay. So Patrick Beverley's 4,300, and we haven't projected for less than 1% ownership, but it's because he's questionable.
Yes, it is.
I was just very confused why he wasn't at the top of the Minnesota ownership projections.
Yeah, I like him at that price tag as well. To me, he's the best play on DraftKings if he's for Minnesota if he's in.
Yeah, if Beverly's in, he looks great at 4,300. So that just threw me off. But beyond that, Towns, Russell, Edwards, they all look fine. They're not priorities. Yeah, just high upside plays. The only guy from Minnesota that I think I will be getting to in any sort of large amount is Patrick Beverley. But there should be plenty of scoring in this game. I mean, it's a good matchup. You know that Edwards is going to chuck up a lot of shots if he is hot. Russell, the same thing. So getting to them in tournaments, assuming they're not going to pull much ownership. Right now we have Russell at 9. We have them both at 8 to 9%. They're both good tournament plays. I think they're relatively low owned ways you can get a very high upside player into your lineup. Towns, the same thing. The center position makes it tough, but 9,400 is still a good price tag for him. So I do like these guys at their current ownership levels, but as far as players that I just expect that I have a lot of exposure to, it would just be Beverly if he's in. I guess Noel if he's out.
On the Portland side, no one on FanDuel is in double digits in ownership. McCollum almost gets there at 9.8%. To me, I think that's incorrect. On the DraftKings side, McCollum does get to double digits at 12%. I think that's way too low. I like Anthony Simons still at 7,200. I think McCollum should be more owned at 7,500 in this spot. I'm surprised to see Robert Covington not pull more ownership. Power forward center eligible, 5,600, 3% owned on DK. I don't mind getting to Nurk or Nas Little. Don't know how much we get out of Norm Powell. 6,800 is not the worst shot in the world, but I'm guessing the minutes are a little bit muted. I think Portland's getting slept on a little bit here.
So do I, particularly McCollum. He played 37 minutes last game. Powell coming back, he's a high usage guy, but it's still going to be McCollum number one. I think Powell has more of a negative impact on somebody like Simons than he does on McCollum. You should get a lot of minutes here. McCollum is around a 1.15 DraftKings point per minute guy without Lillard over the last couple of seasons. Assuming he plays 37, 38 minutes, that looks pretty good at 7,500.
He's my preferred option here in this game. Came out of my sim 19% of the time. I gave him 36 minutes. I think CJ is probably one of my favorite plays of the day, at least relative to salary. And I'm assuming I have no idea how many minutes Norm Powell plays, but I'd at least like to take a mild shot if he is unowned. But I'm guessing that number comes up from 0.1% to 5%, and it just doesn't look all that interesting at that point.
Yeah, I mean, 6,800 is probably where he should be. He's at 0.89 DraftKings points per minute without Dame on the floor this year. 26.6% usage, but doesn't do much of anything else.
Anything else here for Portland?
463 minutes this year without Lillard for McCollum, 29.3% usage, 21.7% assist percentage, 1.1 DraftKings points per minute.
I got him at 1. I got him a little bit higher than that for today too. And faster paced game against Minnesota, nice high total.
Yeah, going back to last year, I think it's a little bit higher too.
Yeah, sure. All righty. Well, you've got GPP videos, injury report, deeper dive for the rest of the day.
Yep.
There it is, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Another strategy show in the books. Good luck tonight, everybody. Make sure you're hitting that like button as you get out of here. Shout out to No House Advantage once again for being the presenting sponsor. We'll talk to you again tomorrow as we do this one again.